Hi, welcome back. This is presentation 4 of Chapter 12, the Bureaucracy. This is our final presentation. We're going to continue taking up the issue of accountability and how the political branches of government can hold federal executive agencies accountable. So one thing, of course, is that the judiciary also has a role to play in accountability. Bureaucratic agencies are subject to judicial review, stemming from the Supreme Court's decision in Marbury versus Madison in 1803. Federal courts settle disputes between Congress and executive branch agencies about the interpretation of laws. Additionally, they monitor the implementation of laws by creating an arena in which individuals or groups who are negatively affected by a regulatory or program or policy where they can bring lawsuits. It's important to keep in mind, however, that the judiciary is a passive actor in the accountability process. Somebody has to bring a complaint into court in order for the judiciary to act, and usually, again, they'll go to a district court first. Whistleblowing is an important avenue, and this is sort of self-regulation. Sometimes federal employees themselves can influence agencies by reporting wrongdoing. In 1989, Congress passed the Whistleblower Protection Act, which protects those reporting mismanagement or corruption from punishment by their colleagues or their superiors. To illustrate, in 2019, a whistleblower, and actually this is an illustration of something where it didn't work, a whistleblower from the U.S. intelligence community filed a complaint about a telephone call between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The whistleblower's accusation was that Trump was withholding desperately needed military assistance and congressionally authorized congressional assistance, and insisting as a condition of releasing that aid that Zelensky announce a criminal investigation into former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter, who had taken a position on a Ukrainian oil company named Burisma. That amounted in the whistleblower's eyes to an attempt to pressure a foreign country to investigate one of the president's main domestic rivals for the president's political gain, to remove a presidential rival. Likewise, a whistleblower complaint by former Facebook employee Frances Haugen led to congressional hearings on Facebook's business practices, sparking calls for more aggressive government oversight over social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, now X, of course, which, the fact that no regulation has taken place to date is again a reflection of the ability of powerful interests to resist, calls for additional oversight. Citizen oversight. Citizens and interest groups were given a powerful tool when Congress passed the Freedom of Information Act in 1966. The intent of FOIA, which is another way it's called, was to increase bureaucratic transparency. Agencies must comply with all FOIA requests unless they fall under one of 9 exemptions, which include, information that's classified as secret, or something that has some sort of national or foreign policy implications, information related solely to internal personnel rules and practices, and personnel, medical, or similar files that the release would clearly constitute a violation of personal privacy. Agencies are required by law to produce records within 20 days, but there are, again, frequent backlogs. In 2017, a USA Today story revealed that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, an agency within the Department of Health and Human Services that conducts research and provides information to protect people from health threats, had tried to keep secret a series of accidents from 2013 to 2015 involving dangerous pathogens such as anthrax and Ebola. The story was based on a heavily redacted lab incident report, or a series of reports that a reporter gained through a FOIA request, and the story led to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce to send a letter to the director of the CDC demanding unredacted incident reports. So again, this is another instance where, if citizens get involved, oftentimes that can trigger Congress to get involved, and that can, again, widen the scope of the challenges for the bureaucracy, and it makes them mind their P's and Q's. The difficulties of bureaucratic control, again, having a federal bureaucracy populated by experts who implement laws and issue regulations in a fair and impartial manner with minimal political interference is an essential feature of effective and efficient government. Unfortunately, civil servants may pursue their own goals rather than those of the president, who oversees the bureaucracy, or Congress, under whose authority civil servants are acting. The tools of control are oftentimes blunt and imperfect, and heavy-handed regulation can contribute to the perception of politicization, which again can impair the bureaucracy in the performance of their tasks. Bureaucratic failure. 2014, you had a waiting list scandal that rocked the Veterans Health Administration. The VHA is actually an organization within the Veterans Administration that provides health care to military veterans. Some VHA hospitals had not met the target for providing appointments for veterans within 14 days, and they created unofficial lists to make their waiting times look better. Veterans Affairs audit and FBI investigation found that over 120,000 veterans were left waiting or never got appointments. In response, Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki resigned, and Congress passed, and President Obama signed legislation that added funding and allowed some veterans to get private health care at the government's expense. In a lot of instances, again, your ability to, as a veteran, to get care with the VHA is dependent on your proximity to a VHA facility. And there's a lot of them, but there's not an infinite number of them. And there are lots of places, lots of veterans live in rural areas where it's a long drive to get to a VHA hospital or to any other hospital. Legislation also gave the VA Secretary increased authority to fire poor-performing managers. Regulatory capture is a serious problem. Again, it's a form of government failure in which regulatory agencies become excessively sympathetic to the interests or businesses that they're supposed to be regulating. Bureaucratic agencies are only as powerful as congressional statutes allow them to be, which means that agencies are sometimes subject to undue influence by the industries they're responsible for regulating. The example of two Boeing 737 Supermax airliners in 2018-2019 crashing, which killed nearly 400 people in Indonesia and Ethiopia, represents a classic example of regulatory capture, where the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, allowed Boeing to self-regulate in the building and the architecture of the 737 Supermax, and they did not provide all the safety features needed to get the Supermax ready for commercial service. Following those crashes, investigations revealed that Boeing cut corners in engineering the 737 and failed to provide adequate pilot training, which again contributed to the crashes. So, bureaucracy, what do you think? Americans tend to hold paradoxical views about the federal bureaucracy. The public broadly expresses dislike for big government as too large, inherently wasteful, and at odds with individual freedom. On the other hand, Americans support many governmental programs and have high expectations for government. The potential problem with these divergent views is that bureaucratic agencies can work to maximize one benefit for citizens, but in doing so undermine other possible benefits. The story at the beginning of our discussion of bureaucracy shows how, at times, the lack of information can prevent agencies from taking action to protect Americans. So, questions to consider. Some argue that Americans' liberties are threatened when bureaucracy grows too large, while others contend that a bureaucracy with too few resources is the real threat. What do you think, Helen Chu? What do you think of the two ladies in New Jersey? What do they think? is the greater threat to bureaucracy? Are there ways in which you have benefited from bureaucratic action or been harmed by it? What types of bureaucratic activity are most noticeable to you? What types are often hidden, from when we look at these things in Chapter 1 and some other chapters? What kinds of reforms would make bureaucracy more accountable to the public? What reforms do you think Hope Gross and the other lady, Joanne Stanton, would advocate? That's it for this chapter. When we come back, we're going to move on to the next chapter, the important role that the judiciary plays in American federal government. I'll see you next time.